black single dad took his drunk boss home. What she did next morning nearly ruined him. There are moments that define a person not by what they chose, but by what they chose when no one was watching. Darnell Carter had spent 37 years building a life that could not afford accidents. Not because he was careless, but because he was careful in the specific, deliberate way of a man who understood that the world did not extend the same grace to everyone. He was a black father, a single one, raising a 9-year-old daughter named Zoe in a 2-bedroom house in a suburb of Charlotte, North Carolina. Working as a senior data analyst at a mid-sized financial services firm called Meridian Group, he had been there for 8 years. He had earned 2 commendations, 1 promotion, and a reputation for being the most precise and least dramatic person in any room he entered. His ex-wife, Leah, had passed away from a pulmonary embolism 2.5 years earlier. She had been 35 years old. Zoe had been 6. There was no clean way to explain that kind of loss, so Darnell had not tried to explain it. He had simply stayed standing, because Zoe needed him to, and he had kept standing every day since. That was the life he had built. Careful, quiet, sufficient. The night everything nearly came apart began the way most disasters begin, not with a catastrophic choice, but with a small, decent one. The company's annual charity reception was held at the Belmont Hotel on a Friday evening in November, and Darnell had planned his attendance with the efficiency he applied to everything. He would arrive at 7. He would circulate for 60 minutes exactly. He would speak to 3 people from upper management, accept 1 drink he would not finish, and leave by 8. He had arranged for his neighbor, Mrs. Okafor, to sit with Zoe until he returned. Zoe had swim practice in the morning. He had set the alarm already. He was not supposed to be there past 8:15. He was not supposed to be anywhere near the East Corridor at 8:40 when he turned the corner and saw his direct supervisor, Catherine Ellison, sitting on the floor with her back against the wall and her evening bag split open at her feet. Catherine was 44 years old, the vice president of analytics, and the most composed person Darnell had ever worked for. She ran meetings that started and ended on time. She spoke in complete sentences. She did not raise her voice, and she did not lose track of details, and she did not, as a general rule, sit on hotel corridor floors with her shoes off and her eyes at half-mast. She was sitting on the hotel corridor floor with her shoes off and her eyes at half-mast. 3 feet away, a man Darnell recognized from the firm's business development team. His name was Preston Cole, late 30s, the kind of confident that came from never having been told no, was crouched beside her at an angle that Darnell did not like. Preston's hand was resting on Catherine's knee. Catherine did not appear to be aware of this. Darnell stopped. He stood in the corridor and did what he always did in the 3 seconds before a decision became irreversible. He ran the math. He was a black man in a back hallway of a hotel. The woman on the floor was his white supervisor. There were no witnesses visible in either direction. Preston Cole would not describe what he had been doing accurately if asked. Catherine would not remember clearly. Whatever happened next, Darnell understood with perfect clarity, would be interpreted by everyone who heard about it through the lens of what they already believed, and what people already believed about a situation like this one was not, historically, generous to men who looked like him. He ran all of that math in 3 seconds. Then he walked forward. Preston looked up. His hand moved off Catherine's knee with a small, practiced casualness that told Darnell everything he needed to know about how deliberate it had been in the first place. "Hey, Darnell, just checking on her. I've got it from here." Preston read Darnell's face for a moment, found nothing negotiable in it, and stood up. He straightened his jacket. He said, "Sure thing," in the tone of a man performing indifference, and walked away down the corridor without looking back. Darnell watched him go. Then, he crouched down, collected Catherine's belongings from the floor, her phone, her lipstick, a small notebook, her room key card, and placed them back in the bag. "Miss Ellison." She focused on him slowly. "Darnell." "Yes. Can you tell me your address? I'll arrange a car." She tried. She gave him the name of her street, then stopped. She had moved to a new apartment 3 months ago after her separation. She could not, at this precise moment, remember the building number. Her phone was dead. The emergency contact listed under her name at the event registration desk was her estranged husband, which Darnell ruled out immediately. He called 2 numbers written on a card in her wallet. No answer. The hotel concierge confirmed there were no rooms available. A medical conference had taken the last of them the previous week. Darnell stood in the lobby for a long moment, holding a dead phone and a business card with 2 unanswered numbers on it, and thought through what was left. He called Mrs. Okafor. She answered on the first ring. "Of course," she said, before he had finished explaining. "Zoe is fine. Go do what you need to do." He wrote the note at his kitchen table while Catherine slept on the sofa. He had gotten her inside without incident, set water and 2 aspirin on the coffee table where she would see them, and retrieved a set of clothes from the box in his hall closet, his sister Pauline's things, left from a visit 4 months ago. Approximately Catherine's size. He folded them and placed them on the armchair. Then he sat down at the table with a yellow legal pad and wrote in the clearest handwriting he had. "Your name is Catherine Ellison. My name is Darnell Carter. I work in your department at Meridian Group. We were both at the company reception at the Belmont Hotel tonight. You were not well, and I could not safely reach anyone on your behalf, so I brought you to my home. Nothing happened. You are sleeping on the sofa. I am sleeping on the floor in the living room. My phone number is written below. Please call me when you wake up, and I will take you wherever you need to go. There is water and aspirin on the table. I apologize for any confusion." He read it over once. He folded it and placed it against the water glass. He checked on Zoe. She was asleep, Mrs. Okafor curled in the reading chair beside her, a crossword puzzle folded open in her lap. Darnell stood in the doorway for a moment, watching his daughter breathe before he thanked Mrs. Okafor in a whisper and walked her out. He got a blanket from the linen closet, turned off the kitchen light, and lay down on the living room floor, with his back against the hardwood and his eyes on the ceiling. He thought about Leah. He thought about the conversation they had the week after Zoe was born, lying in this same house in a bedroom that was now Zoe's. Leah laughing at something he had said that he could no longer remember, only the sound of the laugh, only the fact of it in the darkness. He thought about how she had always said he worried too much. He thought that she had not been wrong, exactly, but that the worry had always been reasonable, and that tonight was evidence of that. He thought, "I did the right thing." He thought, "I hope that is enough." He closed his eyes and did not sleep. Catherine came back to herself in stages, none of them comfortable. The ceiling was wrong. She noticed this before she noticed anything else, pale gray, unfamiliar, not hers. She sat up, and the room moved, and she held very still until it agreed to stop. The inventory arrived piece by piece. Sofa, not her bed. Someone else's living room. Clothes on her body that she did not recognize. A coffee table with a glass of water, 2 white tablets, and a folded piece of paper standing upright against the glass. She was disoriented in the absolute, unmoored way of a person whose last reliable memory ends several hours before the present moment. On the end table beside the sofa, her phone was plugged into a charger, fully charged. She did not stop to consider the significance of this. She unplugged it, unlocked it, and called the first number she trusted. Simone Banks had been Catherine's closest friend since law school. She was also, for the past 6 years, Catherine's personal attorney. Simone answered on the 3rd ring, voice alert immediately. "Catherine, where are you?" Catherine told her what she knew: a hotel reception the night before, a gap in memory she could not account for, waking up in a house she did not recognize, clothes she did not recognize, a man who worked for her somewhere in the building. Simone's voice shifted in the way Catherine recognized from a dozen depositions and 3 court proceedings, calm, precise, already building a position. "Do not speak to him. Do not answer any questions he asks you. I need you to call your HR director the moment the line opens, that is in approximately 50 minutes. You call first, Catherine, before he has any opportunity to construct a narrative. Do you understand me?" "Simone, I don't know what actually. What you know, and what you don't know, is exactly the problem. You don't remember. He was alone with you. You are 14 months into a custody dispute with a man whose entire legal strategy depends on finding something to use against you." A pause. I am going to send an email to HR right now establishing a timestamp. It does not commit you to anything formal. It simply establishes that you were the first to raise a concern. Catherine's ex-husband, Gerald, had hired a litigation firm that had been watching her life with the patience of people who were being paid by the hour to wait. The custody of their 10-year-old son, Marcus, had been contested since the separation. Gerald's team had already filed one motion referencing a weekend business trip that had run long and a photograph from a charity event that had been cropped in a way that changed its meaning. Catherine was not naive about what a night like this one could become in the right or wrong hands. Simone was trying to protect her. 50 minutes, Simone said. Call me first. The call ended. Catherine sat in the unfamiliar living room with the phone in her hands. On the coffee table, the folded piece of paper leaned against the glass of water. She did not pick it up. The bedroom door opened. Catherine turned. The girl was small and serious, with her hair pulled into two uneven puffs and a stuffed rabbit held against her chest with one arm. She was wearing a sweatshirt with a cartoon telescope on the front. She looked at Catherine with the calm, diagnostic attention of a child who is assessing a situation before deciding what to do about it. She appeared to decide that the situation was, on balance, manageable. You're the lady my dad helped, she said. Catherine blinked. Yes, I think so. He said you got sick at the work party. The girl moved to the armchair across the room and climbed into it, tucking her feet beneath her. He missed my swim meet. He was going to time my laps. Catherine felt the sentence land somewhere specific. I'm sorry, she said. I'm really sorry about that. The girl shrugged the way children shrug when they have already made peace with something and are willing to demonstrate that peace to the relevant adult. He watched the video 4 times. Coach Briggs recorded it. She paused. He cried on the third one, but he said it was because the pool lighting made his eyes water. Catherine looked at her. I'm Zoe, the girl said. Zoe. Catherine repeated it. I'm Catherine. Zoe seemed to find this acceptable. She looked at Catherine for one more moment, then climbed back out of the armchair and went to the kitchen, where she began making herself breakfast with the quiet efficiency of a child who had been operating independently in the mornings for some time. Catherine sat with the silence. Something in the room had changed while Zoe was talking. The panic that had been the room's atmosphere when Catherine woke up had thinned, replaced by something more complicated and less comfortable, the specific unease of a person beginning to suspect that the story they have been telling themselves may not be the only available story. She looked around the living room properly for the first time. On the refrigerator, held by a small magnet shaped like a fish, was a printed school calendar covered in handwritten annotations, Zoe's practices in green, school events in blue, a pediatric dentist appointment marked with a small star for the coming Wednesday. On the bookshelf, a photograph in a simple frame, Darnell Younger, a woman beside him with an expression of complete, unguarded happiness, and a Zoe who could not have been more than 4 years old, all 3 of them outside somewhere in summer light. The woman in the photograph was not there anymore. Catherine understood this without needing to be told. On the floor near the front door, 2 small sneakers sat perfectly aligned, toes out, heels together. And on the living room floor, 6 feet from the sofa where Catherine had slept, a folded blanket lay against the hardwood carrying the shape of a night spent there, close enough to be present, far enough to be clear. Catherine stood up. She walked to the coffee table. She picked up the note. She read it once, and then again, more slowly, and then she stood holding it for a long moment with both hands, reading a third time as if rereading might change what it said or what it meant about the email that had already been sent. It did not change either of those things. She set the note down very carefully, the way you set something down when you want to give it the respect of a considered placement rather than a gesture, and she stood for a moment in the quiet of a house that belonged to a man she had been about to let Simone destroy. Darnell came out of Zoe's room to find Catherine standing in the living room, with a look on her face he could not immediately read. He had changed clothes, and he looked like a man who had not slept, which was accurate. He registered her expression. He registered the note in her hand, set on the coffee table. He registered the slight difference in her posture from what he expected, though he did not allow himself to conclude anything from it, because he had learned long ago that expectation was expensive. Good morning, he said. How are you feeling? Darnell, I need to tell you. His phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. He looked at it from across the room. He crossed to it and read the message. The message was from HR. It was 3 sentences. It asked him to remain at home and await a call. It referenced an open inquiry. He set the phone down. He was aware of Catherine watching him. He was aware of Zoe in the kitchen, pouring orange juice with careful, two-handed attention. He kept his voice level because Zoe could hear everything in this house and always had. That's HR, he said. They want me to wait for a call. I know. Catherine's voice was quiet. Darnell, I am going to fix this. He looked at her. He measured what he saw against what he knew, which was that the email had already been sent, that HR had already received it, and that the fixing of a thing and the undoing of a thing were not always the same action. You should go, he said. I'll call you a car. I'm going to fix it, she said again, with a specificity that told him she had already decided how. He called her a car. She gave him her address from memory, which she had recovered overnight, the way dislocated things sometimes reassemble themselves without assistance. While they waited for the car, she stood near the door, and Darnell stood near the kitchen, and neither of them said anything more, because there was nothing more that needed saying before action. When the car arrived, she left. Darnell stood at the kitchen window and watched the car move down the street and disappear at the corner. Then he refilled his coffee and sat down at the table. Zoe brought him a piece of toast. She had made it without asking because she had learned to read the particular quality of her father's silences, and this one called for toast. He ate it slowly and waited for the phone to ring. The call came at 9:17. The HR director's name was Walter Sims. He had been in the role for 11 years, and he spoke with the practiced neutrality of a man who had learned to conduct these conversations without his own reactions entering the room. He outlined the report. He said the word inquiry. He said the phrase preliminary assessment. He said that Darnell would have full opportunity to present his account, and that the company took these matters seriously, and that this call was not a determination of any kind. Darnell listened to every word. When Walter finished, Darnell said, I would like to tell you what happened. He told it the same way he would have presented data in sequence, without editorializing, with specific details in specific places. The corridor, Preston Cole, the dead phone, the 2 unanswered numbers, the unavailable hotel rooms, Mrs. Okafor, the note, written at the kitchen table before he went to sleep, the sofa, the floor, the clothes belonging to his sister Pauline, the aspirin on the coffee table, the phone charged and placed within reach so that Catherine could call anyone she needed to call. He told all of it with his hands flat on the kitchen table and his voice completely even, because he had learned that in rooms where power was not evenly distributed, the person who remained calmest was often the only one who got to tell their story twice. Walter Sims thanked him and said someone would be in touch before end of business. The call lasted 9 minutes. When it ended, Darnell put the phone down and sat very still. He thought about the custody agreement. He thought about the specific language of the review clause and what constituted a material change in circumstances. He thought about what it meant for a file to be opened, even preliminarily, even if ultimately closed, the way such things became part of a record, the way records followed people into rooms they hadn't entered yet. He thought about Leah. He thought about the morning he had told Zoe that her mother was not coming home, sitting on this same kitchen floor with Zoe in his lap, both of them too stunned for tears yet, just holding on. He thought about the promise he had made in that moment, not out loud, not to anyone, just to himself, and to the idea of Leah still present in the room, that Zoe would always have one parent who showed up, who stayed, who did not flinch. He heard the bedroom door. Zoe came in wearing her swim team jacket over her pajamas, carrying a book she had been reading since Thursday. She set the book on the table. She looked at him. Daddy. Hey, Z. You look like the work thing is bad. He looked at her for a moment. She was 9 years old, and she had her mother's directness, and there was no clean way to protect her from the fact of a situation by pretending the situation did not have a face. It is something I am handling, he said. It is going to be okay. Is it because of the lady? It is complicated. Are you going to lose your job? He got up from the chair and crossed to her and crouched down, the way he always did for the conversations that mattered. I did not do anything wrong last night, he said. I helped someone who needed help. Some people do not have all the information right now. I am going to make sure they get it. That is all that is happening. Zoe studied his face with an attention so complete it was almost uncomfortable. Okay, she said. Do you want me to make more toast? He pulled her into a hug that lasted longer than the hug required, his chin against the top of her head, both arms around her, and she held on without asking why, because she was Zoe, and she had always known when holding on was the appropriate response. Yeah, he said. More toast would be good. Catherine called Simone from the car. She did not give Simone room to begin, she said. I read the note. Simone was quiet for 3 seconds. He wrote it before I woke up, Catherine said. Before anything. He described exactly what happened, left his phone number, told me where I was and why. The clothes on the armchair, those belonged to his sister. He slept on the floor, Simone. On the floor, 6 feet away, the whole night. Her voice was even, but the evenness was built on top of something much less even. His daughter told me he missed her swim meet, that he watched the recording 4 times. Catherine, I also looked at that living room, the schedule on the refrigerator, the photograph on the shelf. She paused. His wife is gone. He is raising that child alone, and we nearly. Okay, Simone said. The lawyer's voice was gone. This was the friend's voice, which Catherine had known for 19 years and recognized immediately. Okay, what do you need? I need you to retract the email. Right now, before Walter Sims forms any impression he cannot unform. And then, I need to call HR myself and tell them what actually happened. A pause that meant Simone was thinking through consequences, which was her job. Done, she said. Thank you, Catherine. Simone's voice was careful. I was trying to protect you. I know, Catherine said. I know you were, but I had information I did not use, and someone almost paid for that. She looked out the car window at the November morning moving past. That is on me. Walter Sims listened without interrupting. Catherine told him everything she had reconstructed, what she remembered, what the note confirmed, what the physical evidence of the room had corroborated. She said that Darnell had acted appropriately at every point. She said that the preliminary report sent on her behalf did not represent her account of the night and should be disregarded entirely. She said she accepted full responsibility for the confusion caused by the delay in that clarification. Then she asked for the hotel's corridor security footage from the previous evening. The footage took 3 hours to obtain. A formal request from Catherine's office, a call from the hotel's legal department, and a coordination between Meridian Group's compliance team and the hotel's security director. The footage was 48 minutes long in total. The relevant portion ran for just under 8 minutes. Walter Sims, Catherine, and Simone watched it together in Walter's office on a screen set up on the conference table. It opened at 8:41. It showed the corridor. It showed Preston Cole beside Catherine, close, in a posture the camera rendered without ambiguity. It showed Darnell arrive, step forward, speak once, and watch Preston leave. It showed him collect Catherine's belongings with unhurried care. Then it cut to the lobby. Darnell stood against a pillar near the concierge desk for 7 minutes and 14 seconds. He was on his phone. He was not pacing. He was standing, steady, working through a list, waiting, calling again, shifting slightly as if a new position might improve the result, calling again. He made 7 calls in 7 minutes. Not one of them was answered. At the 6-minute mark, he spoke briefly to the concierge, received the answer he had been hoping not to receive, and stood for a moment with the phone at his side. Then he made one more call. His posture changed when it was answered, a visible settling, a breath. Mrs. Okafor. Catherine understood. Simone, sitting beside Catherine, said nothing. Catherine watched Darnell stand in that lobby, alone in his tuxedo jacket at 9 o'clock on a Friday night, trying to find anyone who would take this responsibility off his hands so that he would not have to carry it, and all the risk that came with it, and finding no one, and carrying it anyway. She watched it to the end. When the footage finished, the room was quiet for a moment. Simone said, I would like to formally withdraw the preliminary report filed on behalf of my client. Already withdrawn, Walter said. As of 40 minutes ago, per Miss Ellison's call. He closed the laptop. "For what it is worth," he said, looking at Catherine, "the note was photographed by the responding HR coordinator before anything else in this process began. It would have been the first piece of evidence reviewed." He paused. "It is a very thorough note." Catherine nodded once. She did not trust herself to say anything more. She came back on a Wednesday. She had waited 5 days after the file was closed, enough time for the urgency to pass and the choice to remain, which she believed was the only way to know whether a choice was genuine. She called ahead, the evening before, and asked if she could come by. Darnell said yes without asking why, in the tone of a man who had decided to see something through to its actual end, rather than the end that was easiest. He opened the door when she knocked. He looked better than he had on Saturday morning, which was not a high bar, but his eyes were clearer, and his posture was the posture she recognized from the office, upright, considered, occupying space without apology. Zoe was at the kitchen table doing a worksheet. She looked up. "Hi," she said to Catherine. "Hi, Zoe." Catherine looked at the swim team jacket hung over the back of Zoe's chair. "Is that from your team?" "The Charlotte Marlins," Zoe said. "Under 10s. I do butterfly and backstroke." She paused. "Butterfly is harder, but I am better at it." "That is usually how it works," Catherine said. Zoe considered this, seemed to find it accurate, and returned to her worksheet. Catherine turned to Darnell. He was standing near the counter, watching her the way he always watched things, without judgment, without rush, simply taking in what was there. "I owe you an apology," she said. "A real one, not the kind that explains itself into something smaller." She did not look away. "I woke up scared, and I let that fear move faster than my judgment. Someone acted on my behalf before I had thought through what I actually knew, which was that I was in the home of someone who worked for me, and there was a note on the table I had not read. That is not enough. It was not enough to justify what was set in motion." She paused. "It could have cost you your job, your daughter. I understand that, and I am sorry." Darnell stood with that for a moment. Somewhere in the kitchen, the refrigerator hummed. Zoe's pencil moved across the worksheet. "You were afraid," Darnell said. "I have been afraid before. I know what it does. It is not an excuse." "No," he said, "it is not. But it is something I understand." He looked at her steadily. "You went back and fixed it. That is not nothing." Catherine held his gaze. She understood that what he was offering her was not forgiveness as a performed gesture, but something more durable, a clear-eyed acknowledgement of what had happened and a decision to move past it without pretending it had not been close. She accepted it for exactly what it was. "Thank you," she said, "for what you did that night." Darnell looked at her with an expression that had something almost wry in it, in the way of people who have just come through something they would not choose to repeat. "I just did what made sense to do," he said. "Not everyone would have," she said. He thought about Preston Cole walking away with his hands in his pockets, whistling. "No," he said, "not everyone would." 4 weeks later, on a Saturday morning in December, Darnell sat in the third row of the Eastside Aquatic Center with his phone propped on the seat back in front of him, video already running. He had arrived 35 minutes early. He had a clear sightline to lane 4. He had tested the phone's zoom twice and confirmed the battery was at 100%. When Zoe walked out onto the pool deck in her team cap and goggles, she did what she always did. She found him immediately, scanning the bleachers in a single focused sweep, and when she located him, she raised one hand in a small, certain wave that meant she knew where he was and could now concentrate on everything else. He raised his hand back. She pulled her goggles down and stepped to the block. At the far end of the bleachers, near the exit doors, Catherine sat alone in her coat, with her hands in her pockets. She had not told Darnell she was coming. She had found the meet schedule on the Aquatic Center's public website, and she had driven here, and she had found a seat where she could see the pool without being easily seen from the front rows. She was not there to be noticed. She was there because there are certain debts that cannot be settled in conversations alone, and she had needed to see the thing she had almost taken from him. The starting buzzer sounded. Zoe hit the water clean and straight, and Catherine watched her move down the lane, arms pulling, body rotating, the particular mechanical beauty of a stroke practiced until it becomes instinct. Darnell was on his feet by the turn. Catherine stayed in her seat and watched him watch his daughter, and she thought about the note on the coffee table, and the blanket on the floor, and the 7 unanswered calls in the hotel lobby, and a man standing alone in a crowded building doing the right thing because a woman who worked for him had needed someone too. The new policy was submitted to the board on the second Thursday of January. Catherine had drafted it herself, late at night, in the quiet of her apartment after Marcus was asleep. It was 4 pages. It required contracted transportation at all company events serving alcohol. It required a designated employee wellness coordinator at any company gathering of 40 or more people, and it contained a formal protection clause reviewed by Simone, refined through 2 drafts, stating that any employee who rendered assistance to a colleague in a state of impairment would be presumed to have acted in good faith, and that the act of providing such assistance could not, in isolation, be the basis for a disciplinary inquiry. The board asked 6 questions. The 6th was whether the policy had been prompted by a specific event. Catherine said yes. She said it clearly, without hedging. No one asked her to elaborate. The policy passed 7-0. Darnell learned about it from an email. It came on a Monday morning, an all-staff message from the operations team. He read it at his desk with his coffee going cold beside him. He read it twice. He sat for a moment afterward in the particular quiet of a thing that is small, and also not small, looking at his screen. He did not say anything to anyone. That evening he picked Zoe up from practice, and on the way home she asked if they could stop for hot chocolate, which was not a regular weeknight thing but which Darnell decided was a regular weeknight thing as of now. They sat across from each other in a window booth at a cafe 3 blocks from their street, 2 cups between them, the December dark outside the glass. "Daddy," Zoe said. "Yeah, Z? Do you think Catherine is okay? Like, is she having a better time now?" Darnell thought about this. He thought about the custody dispute and the legal team and the particular exhaustion of people who are fighting on multiple fronts at once. He thought about her sitting in his living room, holding the note with both hands, the morning everything had almost gone wrong in both directions. "I think she is working on it," he said. Zoe nodded, satisfied with this as an answer. "I told her butterfly is harder, but I am better at it," she said. "I know. I heard you." She said that is usually how it works. Zoe wrapped both hands around her cup. "I think that is true about a lot of things, not just swimming." Darnell looked at his daughter, 9 years old, earnest and precise, already arriving at conclusions that took most people much longer to reach. "Yeah," he said. "I think you might be right about that." Zoe drank her hot chocolate. The cafe was warm. Outside, the first snow of the season had begun to fall on the sidewalks of Charlotte in a quiet, unhurried way, covering the ground without fuss, making the ordinary world look briefly and entirely clean. Darnell watched it for a moment. Then he picked up his cup and drank, and let the evening be exactly what it was.